Welcome to the Bhagavatam. I was here an hour early because I thought it was 9:30, but it was only 8:30. All right, you are now in the fourth section of the Bhagavatam, the fourth canto, the fourth part, the fourth book out of 12. And within that section, you are at about the 28th chapter out of about 32 or something. So you are almost at the end of the fourth canto. You have heard about the family descendants from Swayambhuva Manu, which is the first being that Brahma created who could reproduce on their own, organically, like biological reproduction, not mechanical reproduction. In other words, before Manu, Brahma himself and others could create beings in the same way that we create robots. They could design them and things. But with Manu and Shatarupa, he figured out how to get self-replicating machines. So in the fourth canto, you hear about the descendants from Manu and Shatarupa. So you heard about Sati, who's one of their very important descendants, and her marriage to Shiva. Then you heard about Dhruva, who's another one of their important descendants, grandson, I think. And his plight with his stepmother, and also his interaction with Vishnu. And then after Dhruva, we heard about Prithu, who's further descendant down from Dhruva, who made the earth more resistant to famine and plague. And then you heard further down the family tree, we heard about the Prachetas, who are the sons of a king named Prachinabarhi, who met Shiva and learned an important song or instruction from Shiva. Then the tale went to their father, Prachinabarhi, because Narada Muni went to try to help their father because he thought it's not really right, or doesn't really make sense that the sons are so much better than the father. The children should inherit the qualities of the parents. So let me try to go help the father, because this father is just leading a very, very ordinary life as a king. So he went there, and he realized that the father understands philosophy in his head by his intellect, but doesn't really feel it. He feels more motivated. He's not a very intellectually motivated person. So although he knows philosophy, it doesn't change his behavior. So Narada decided to tell him a story. First, he actually tried to shock him and show him something about the karma that's waiting for him as a result of killing all the animals that he kills. And then he decided to tell him a story. Instead of teaching philosophy on a chalkboard, he did those type of things. So he tells him a story, a fake story, an allegory about a king and his country and his city. But everything in the story is analogous to some bit of philosophy. So this way, Narada is going to, who's a really great teacher, Narada is an excellent teacher, he's going to get the philosophy, he's going to tie the philosophy to a firework. He's going to tie the philosophy to a story that the king can feel for the characters. And then that philosophy will sink in. So we've gone through how the king meets the queen, who symbolizes the intellect, how they get married, how he gets a little bit tired of listening to everything she has to say, and he gets into trouble. He comes back and agrees to submit, and then he has this flourishing prosperity, but with all these kids that they have, it's difficult to maintain, how that all goes. And then, but basically he basically has a very enjoyable first half of his life, although there's some problems maintaining it. But then you hear about the enemies of his city, the enemies of his country. So he has two enemies. One is the Sky King and one is the foreigner. The Sky King is the passage of time. The way the sun moves and causes time to pass. So the Sky King has an army of days and nights, 360 days and nights. Who are black and white soldiers who fight in pairs. That's the allegory stuff. Then the foreigner king is disease. All the pollen that is currently all over the air, the coronavirus that's currently out all over the place, all those foreign things that are foreign to our body that cause death. So the city has these two enemies. However, it has one great guardian, this dragon, this 5-headed dragon, which signifies our prana or vitality. But Narada Muni explains that the dragon has to fight off the constant onslaught of the Sky King. And it can do so for 100 years, but as it does so, it gets more and more tired. So as it does so, the successes that it has in battle come more slowly. Yeah, they come more slowly, so there's more of an effect from the time. And what happens is the second enemy takes advantage of the fatigue caused by the first enemy and causes more damage. So in other words, disease, foreign things like bacteria, virus, etc., they take advantage of the fact that because we're old, because we've been around for a long time, our vitality is tired of fighting to keep us genki, to keep us energetic. So the disease can get in easier to our body and get in further and do more damage. And so as the analogy goes, once he passes his halfway point in life, he starts to feel the effects of this. He starts to notice the effects of this. So once he gets around 50 years old, he starts to notice that he's getting sick a lot more often. So he utilizes his country surrounding the city to get medicines. And that buys him a little bit of time. More. But nonetheless, this process keeps going. And the daughter of time, old age, she partners with death and his army. And now we are at the current point in the story. Heralding doom. So this chapter is called The Fall and Rise of a City. What's the city? It's the body. In the allegory, the city is the body. So the fall and rise of a city means death and rebirth. Heralding doom. The soldiers of fearsome death invaded the citizens' domain, led by the incinerator and Time's daughter. So that's the trio. Fearsome Death, the king, the foreign king, his name is Fearsome Death. His younger brother, his older brother comes first. His older brother is the incinerator or fever. And the incinerator's wife is Time's daughter, old age. So these three come in along with all of Death's army, soldiers, which are all the different types of diseases. Besieging the city, they immediately brutalized it to plunder its treasures of worldly pleasures, besieging, surrounding. The old serpent protecting it could do very little to stop them because it's old. Now you'll get a nice view of Time's daughter and her special ultimate power. Time's daughter strode forth. In her presence, everyone loses their power. So she easily seized control of the city, allowing the soldiers of fear to pour through the gates and wreak havoc within. See, old age has no particular power The only power that it has is it makes everything else powerless. So this is why she's a ferocious warrior. She's a female. She doesn't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. She doesn't have to even be, what's her name? Largatha, the shield maid. She's described nondescriptly as a female. It's not that she needs a lot of muscle, but her power is she makes everybody else weak. And then even if she only has a finger, she hits you with a finger, you fall over. So that's what old age is. It doesn't have any special power of its own. It just makes everything else lose its power. So just to start over, heralding doom, the soldiers of fearsome death invaded the citizens' domain, led by the incinerator and Time's daughter. Besieging the city, they immediately brutalized it to plunder its treasures of worldly pleasures. The old serpent protecting it could do very little to stop them. Time's daughter strode forth. In her presence, everyone loses their power, so she easily seized control of the city, allowing the soldiers of fear to pour in through the gates and wreak havoc within. So also, that's the actual tangible effect of old age, is that it makes you much more susceptible to illness. Their every attack, caused the citizen terrible pain, for he considered his precious city and its inhabitants to be his very self. So the citizen, I should call him the king, right? Just to be consistent. So the king is the soul. The soul feels pain or pleasure related to the body because it decided to be that body. It decided to invest itself in that body. So this is a tricky point in Vedic philosophy. The soul doesn't. It is sometimes said that the soul doesn't feel any pleasure or pain through the body. It's not affected by the. It's not. It's never said that the soul doesn't feel pleasure or pain through the body, but it is said that the soul is not affected by the pleasure and pain that it feels through the body. And that's the difference. The soul feels the pleasures and pains of the body because it is putting itself into the body. But it's not actually in the body. It's not actually the body. So it's not actually affected by it. It's only vicariously or psychosomatically. I think that's the right word. Affected. So similarly to how you might want to go and get entertained by a movie. So you go to the movie and then you start crying and you start laughing because of the movie. You're not actually affected by the events in the movie, but you're feeling the effects of the movie. And if you could unplug yourself from your absorption in the movie, then all of a sudden you would have no connection with those pleasures and pains. That's the relationship. So every attack caused the king terrible pain, for he considered his precious city and its inhabitants. But this is the problem. You would think, well, I would like to identify with my city for the first 50 years and not for the last 50 years. I'll identify with it while everything is pretty good and not when everything starts to go south. But you can't. You know about habits, don't you? You know about habits, you know about momentum of force. You can't just stop doing what you've been doing for 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, a million years, infinite time. You can't just stop identifying with something because you value it. That's what it means to identify with it. So even though things start to go south, the king doesn't think, okay, now I don't want to invest in this anymore. He feels this is my way to experience pleasure and pain. I need to protect it. To experience pleasure, I need to protect it from pain. Time's daughter strode into the palace and embraced the king. I wish I could see this in a movie. Whenever she goes anywhere, it loses its color. Time's daughter strode into the palace and embraced the king, draining him of all opulence. The combined... So what's that? The old age drains the soul of its opulence. It prevents... Because what illness does is it prevents the soul from operating through the body. So the opulence and the power and the strength and the vitality that is the soul can't come through the body anymore when the body is malfunctioning due to disease. That's what's meant there. Time Sorter strode into the palace and embraced the king, draining him of all opulence. The combined forces of the Sky King and fearsome death wrecked his city. Confused amidst the chaos, his sons, grandsons, servants, ministers, and even his wife would not comply with his will. The 5 provinces surrounding the city rebelled, and he could find no protection or remedy anywhere. Insurmountable anxiety overwhelmed him. So here's a little note. When the body is sufficiently damaged, its powers, signified by the queen and her friends and children, no longer function properly, and the soul is unable to utilize them correctly. The rebellion in the 5s symbolizes the fact that sense objects can no longer be enjoyed when the body ceases to function properly. In fact, these objects only cause further problems and pains to the malfunctioning body. So there's 2 points. The point here is confused amidst the chaos. His sons, grandsons, servants, ministers, and even his wife would not comply with his will. That's what happens when the old age gets very advanced and you get literally embraced by the old age. Then the body gets wrecked by the combined forces of the Sky King and the Foreign King. When the body is wrecked, the powers of the body get confused and can't cooperate with the soul. Even the whole nervous system that enables the cooperation between the soul and the body starts to break down. So that's what's symbolized there by their not being able to comply. And then the 5 provinces surrounding the city rebelled. The 5 provinces, remember, is the land around the city, which is the world of 5 perceptions. Previously, he could utilize this land to enjoy his life. All of his children dwelt out there, and they just exploited it, and then he tried to refertilize it by doing more and more nefarious rituals. Then he could get his medicines from there. He could go to the different cities and enjoy the different things out there. But when you get very old, that same piece of cake that you used to love when you were 15 now is going to make you ill for 15 days when you eat it. Or that same stroll in the park is now actually just going to make you break your hip. So that's what's explained. That's what's symbolized by the rebellion in the surrounding counties of the 5. When all this is happening, the king has no remedy or protection anywhere. His wife, his intellect is not cooperating. His functions in his body are not cooperating. The sense objects are not cooperating. They're damaging him instead of pleasing him. So he gets insurmountable anxiety. That's what it's like to die, friends. The king still desired pleasures, but the daughter of time drained all the pleasure from every object. She's such a drain, making them stale and old. Unable to find anything desirable, he lost all motivation except his affection for wife and children. So you'll also find that motivation is a key to surviving in old age. When people are highly motivated, they tend to stick around because they want to get the results of their action. But when people lose their motivation, they tend to die because they have nothing to remain for. They don't make the effort, and all these things are subtle, and they all come from the emotions. They don't make the emotional effort, keep the vitality in the body going, which refreshes and repairs the body. But what happens, even if you are able to maintain motivation into a very advanced age, eventually the effect of old age will be to drain the power from your senses and make it unable for you to interact with the desirable objects. Sex, how can you have sex when you're like 90 years old? 98 years old? Like, you probably literally can't. But it's a big motive for everybody, but it's not a motivator for you anymore. You want to look beautiful. Yeah, good luck. Your skin is sagging on the floor. So that's not a motivation anymore either. You want to be smart. Great. You can't even remember your own name anymore. So that's not a motivator either anymore. You, whatever, you want to see your grandkids grow up. That's the only thing that remains. It says, right? He lost all motivation except his affection for his wife and children. So the only thing that keeps the old person, very, very old person, alive really is the affection for the family members. The only motivation which remains is to experience their affection for him. That's why, unfortunately, this is my experience too. We had bad timing where we had to move from one house to another, and so we couldn't go and see my grandfather-in-law, great grandfather-in-law, during that time. That's when he died, because we previously would go see him, and he really enjoyed that. He was 99 years old. So the people, that's the only thing that remains, right? And what does that symbolize in the story? Who is the wife and who are the children? They're the king's self-concepts, the particulars of his self-concepts. I am a good person. I'm a charitable person. I am, etc., etc. Those are all the children. So the only thing that remains for the soul in very advanced age is its sense of still wanting to be what it was. And that keeps it hanging on a bit. The city now completely wrecked and ransacked. The invaders began to force the king out of it. That's why they have to force the king out of the wrecked city. Because this is what you're thinking. You're thinking, no, I'll just identify with my body for the first half of life, and then as soon as I hit 50, I'll unidentify with it. Good luck. You get very attached to the things that whatever brings you happiness, you get attached to. That's why people are addicted to heroin. Whatever brings them some sensation that they need or want, they get addicted to it. So good luck just dropping on a dime your attachment to your physical body if you cultivate it for 50 years. It's going to take you about 50 years to get rid of it. So yeah, so not only can we not give it up like right away as soon as it starts to be bad, even when it's completely wrecked, we will still hang on to it and still want to stay in it, because it has its associations to everything that we were, the wife and the children. The way that our intellect worked and the way that our plans were, that's symbolized by the affection for the wife. And the way that the identity came about as a result of those plans, that's signified by the kids. But then you will get forced out. Now this is describing the death for the common person. Of course, it's not describing death for a yogi. In the next part of the story, you'll hear that. The city now completely wrecked and ransacked, the invaders began to force the king out of it. The incinerator gleefully set it ablaze, so very high fever, delighting and inviting his younger brother. Younger brother is death, because fever comes before death. That inferno threatened to consume the king, his wife, their followers, and all their descendants. That's why they have to leave. So that's the next thing he says. Just as a snake tries to escape from the hollow of a burning tree, the city's protector trembled and tried to flee from the burning city. That's the dragon, the serpent. Crushed and emasculated, his enemies arrested him, and he began to wail. So this is also a little bit of an allegory. This is also an interesting part of the allegory. When death is immediately imminent, the vital force ceases to circulate in the body. So now you're talking about when the king is being forced out of the city. So this is like the 5 minutes or so before death. Or maybe some people it's longer, like a half hour. So what happens is the fever will push the soul out of the body. And the snake will try to avoid the snake, which is the protector of the city. It tries to get out of the body, or it tries to avoid the fires, the pains, and when it gets arrested, he says, as it's trying to escape, he gets arrested and begins to cry. So this is analogous to the vital force ceases to circulate in the body. It's arrested. And that causes the breath to do very weird things, to tremble. And that's how he's trembling and trying to flee. And produce unusual sounds, often referred to as the death rattle, and that's his wailing. So those would be very frightening sounds that dying people often make as a result of their breath being very, very weird. As a result of the vital force trying to flee, but getting arrested at the same time. Daughters, sons, grandchildren, daughters. Why don't I do this? There's too many commas. It just gets so unwieldy. Daughters and sons, grandchildren, daughters and sons-in-law, friends, property, home, treasury, and accessories, all, and of course his infatuating lover, all these things that delight the home dweller obsessed with eye and mind also make him extremely miserable when he loses them. That's a problematic paragraph linguistically. What Narada is doing is he's not really talking too much about the king right now. He's just making a generic statement. He's saying, look, all the things that made the king so happy earlier in life are now going to make him very, very miserable. Because he's going to lose those. Because losing those things makes you very miserable. Gaining them makes you very happy. The ruined king lamented. When I go to the inner realm, this lady will have no one to support her. That means when I die, when I go to the inner realm, this lady will have no one to support her. Surrounded by so many needy children, she will lament. How will she continue to exist without me? Her whole life was based on me. She would not eat unless I ate. She would not bathe unless I bathed. If I was irritated, she was concerned. If I was annoyed, she became silent. When I was ignorant, she educated me. If I was away, she withered in sadness. Without me, how will she be able to take care of all the children she mothered? Nor will my children be able to take care of themselves. When I am gone, they will be like shipwrecks at sea. While his depressed thoughts lamented the inevitable. This is also kind of important. This is what occupies the mind of the dying person, is something useless. They just focus on the regrettableness of the thing, which is inevitable. There's no need for you to think about it. Think about something else. While his depressed thoughts lamented the inevitable, the undefeatable king of foreigners, fearsome death, arrived and arrested him. So it arrested him right in the middle of him just lamenting. He died. Now it's talking about what happens after death. Death's soldiers bound him like an animal and led him away to their own abode. His family and friends, weeping and terribly confused, followed behind. So this is an interesting point. I think I may have edited it out. I may need to put it back in. The interesting point is the family and friends follow behind. That's analogous to the fact that actually the mind, or the mind stuff, mind, which means the ego, the feelings, and then the thought processes, they actually follow the consciousness out of the body. They don't stick in the body and die with the body. They go with the soul. Hence, the soul carries a lot of stuff from one body to the next. But you're going to see what happens in between bodies. Makes it kind of non-distinct. The stuff that we carry gets crushed and smashed. So it still exists, but it gets mushed into a new form as it goes into the next body. You'll see that in this allegory. As soon as the serpent left the city, it crumbled into stones and dust. Is it clear? Is it clear that this is the city crumbled? Let me do it this way. As soon as the serpents left it, the city crumbled into stones and dust. What is that? That's ashes to ashes, dust to dust. So the king's body is there. It's very, very juicy and prosperous in youth, and it gets pretty full in maturity in adulthood, and then it starts to get dry and wither in old age, and then by the time people die, they're pretty shrunken, and I mean, in natural deaths, they're pretty shrunken and depleted. However, they still are a body. You can still see they have a head and arms and legs and everything, right? But once the soul and mind, intellect, etc., gets pulled out of the body, then he actually has to get extracted from the body, like dentist extracting teeth. Once the soul and everything gets extracted from the body, within a short time, relatively speaking, compared to 100 years, within a very short time, most of the soft stuff is gone. It just turns back into mush. And then within a relatively short time, most of the bones will go away. So what's being shown there is that while there's no vitality to maintain it, it just crumbles back into its ingredients. As soon as the serpent left it, the city crumbled into stones and dust. The powerful foreigners dragged, please, 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 let somebody in Hollywood watch this stream and get into it and make a movie of this. The powerful foreigners dragged the king onward. Eclipsed by darkness, he could not comprehend the presence of his ancient friend and benefactor. So not only is he being followed by his family and friends, his ancient friend, remember the story started out? Once upon a time, there was a king who had a friend that he didn't know. So this unknown friend is there, moving with him as the guy is being dragged out of one body and into the next. But that former king is not aware of that. Animals surrounded him. The animals he had slaughtered in his sacrifice, furiously remembering the torment he caused them. They hacked at him with axes as he was dragged along. So also, animals can't really wield axes, can they? Well, how do they hold them? In their hoofs? In their mouths? Maybe in their mouths. So this would be difficult to put into a movie, but this is not happening in a physical realm. This is happening in a mental realm. The world which is on the other side of death is not a physical world. It's a mental world. And you can access that world through your dreams. It's the same world. It's the same mental world. And all the kind of wacky things that happen in dreams, like unexplainable, yet you totally accept them and experience them, is the kind of stuff that happens after death as well. So like an animal picking up an axe and hitting you is completely plausible in that world. Plunged in endless darkness, he suffered for what seemed to be an eternity. That's the other thing about dreams and the mental world. You don't have concrete time. In the physical world, we have concrete time, mostly as a kind result of the movement of the planets. We have a concrete sense of time. But in the mental world, which is the world on the other side of death, there's concrete time. It's elastic time. Plagued in endless darkness, he suffered for what seemed to be an eternity. That's probably what these Western religions are talking about with eternal hell and eternal heaven. That torment destroyed all his memories. Destroyed all his memories. So all of the faculties which are following him are gradually eroded by his experiences. And I've had a few kids, and I noticed that when they're born, they have some of the remembrances, but then also the traumatic experience of the birth gets rid of some. But I've noticed that after birth, they have some weird memories until they establish new stuff in the new life. So some little things or habits or quirks will survive, but most of the stuff just gets genericized. So you're wondering, how come I can't remember my past life? Or what exactly did I do in my past life? It's not important. That's why. And because you can't get into your new life if you're remembering your past life. And you want to be into your new life. That's the whole reason why you're there. So the experience that happens between the bodies actually pulverizes the specifics, not the essence, but the specifics of the previous experiences, and makes them kind of turns them back into the mush that they can be used to build new memories in the next life. That torment destroyed all his memories. All that remained was a vague sense of attachment. The essence of the things, the essence of the memories, the essence of the feelings, the essence of the aspirations will remain and act as the seeds for motivation in the next life. But the specifics of them will be mushed to make room for the new specifics. All that remained was a vague sense of attachment to an infatuating woman. That's his former wife. Since his mind held on to that concept, he became an extremely infatuating woman when he finally emerged again from the inner world, being born as the daughter of Vidarbha, a lion amongst kings. And we'll probably stop there. So let me know if you have any questions about it. She'll be known by the patronymic Vidarbhi. The name means without fear and also means without dharba. And dharba is the grass that is used without in Vedic sacrifices. So the word Vidarbha also means without sacrifices. So that foreshadows that in his next life, the citizen would not selfishly exploit the world and its animals. The problem with Barhishat, the king, the person who Narada is telling the story to, is that he's exploiting the sacrifices, just like the king was, to maintain his happiness, and to maintain his lifestyle. So he's killing animals selfishly. And in the next life, the name of the person who he becomes in his next life, there's two things. One is that he becomes a female, and the other is that her name is Vidarbhi. So she'll be completely opposite from the guy, from the king. One, she's not going to have a male disposition, and two, she's not going to have an exploitive disposition. So maybe I'll just give you the first bit, because the thing about him becoming a female has been introduced, and we might as well mention something about it. So I'll just give you the first bit of the next part of the story, and the rest of that next part of the story we'll look at next week. The life of Vidarbhi. Vidarbhi married Malyadhvaja, the prince of Pandya, who won her devotion by his valor and flawlessly conquering all the princes of all the other lands. Yeah, and then it talks about their kids. So here, the most obvious thing here is that the citizen, formerly male, is now female. So who's the citizen in the allegory? It's the soul. So is the soul male or female? The soul's both. And you can have either disposition that it wants. The male and female are two things which are based on the soul. So the soul is both, yet neither. It can be male or female depending on how it expresses itself. Now, that's why you can be born as a male or you can be born as a female. Now, in the allegory, when the soul is described as a male, it has a certain attitude, a male attitude. And when it's described as a female, it has a female attitude. So one of the basic differences is that when he's a male, he wants a wife. And when he's a female, she wants a husband. And what's the difference between a wife and a husband? It's that one is female and one is male. But what is the difference between the male and the female? Well, the female has boobs and the male has muscles. That's the difference. So a male is not very comforting. It's not very soft or pillowish. I'm just thinking of my daughter's relationship with her mom. Mom, you're so comfortable. You're so soft. The male has muscle. What can the male do with muscle? The male can pick things up for you, and the male can also punch other things in the face for you. Because the other males are going to come and try to rip off your clothes, and your friend male can punch him in the face. That's what males are for. They have muscle, they can lift things up, they can push things around, they can scare other people off, or they can kill other people. So they can protect you. Males can protect, females can delight. Females are cushy, cozy, soft, fun, interesting. Males are boring, monotonous. They talk monotone. Females are interesting, dynamic. So this is the difference. When the soul has a male attitude, then it wants a wife. What does that mean? That means that when the soul has a male attitude, it thinks of itself as the muscle man. What does a muscle man do from his perspective? Muscle man conquers the world. That's the male ambition. Conquer the world. I'll conquer the world. I'll conquer all my friends in 6th grade. And I'm going to conquer everybody on this sports team. And I'm going to conquer the world. I'm going to get everything. I'm going to get everything with my muscles. So that's the attitude of the soul, basically. All the souls, basically, have that attitude. You're wondering, is my soul male or female? Maybe because my body is female, my soul must be male. My soul must be female. Your soul is male. If you're here in this world, your soul is male. Because what are you trying to do? You're trying to conquer this world and get stuff for it. Get stuff for yourself. When the soul has a masculine attitude, then its intellect will take the role of female. This is also like Mercury. Mercury's mythology expresses this same thing that's being expressed here in this story of Vidarbhi. Mercury, when it feels male, then its wife, Pingala, becomes female. But when Mercury feels female, then its wife becomes male. So when the soul or the consciousness has the attitude of I'm gonna conquer the world, I'm gonna take things for myself with my power, then its intellect is the one who provides great stuff to take. So he marries a beautiful queen. But when the soul is female, then it feels that I am the source of pleasure for the world. I'm not the conqueror of the world, but I'm like the source of the world, and the emanator of the world, and the invigorator of the world, and the enlivener of the world. That's the difference between male and female, which you can't deny because it just is physically evident. That women make babies. They produce the world. They nourish the world. So when that is the attitude, then the soul, the intellect, which is the soul's partner, just like Mercury's partnered with Ida Vida, or whatever, I forget what his name is. Their name is. Mercury and Mercury's spouse are kind of analogous allegory to the citizen and the citizen's spouse. The citizen is feeling male, then the spouse is female. But if the citizen is feeling female, then the spouse is male. So when he takes birth as a female, then the intellect is not going to be teaching him how to enjoy the world as it was in the whole first part of the story. Instead, the intellect is going to be the one that's protecting it from harm. So the most obvious thing here is that the citizen, formerly male, is now female. When the soul has a male disposition, it desires a wife, someone who will make life more pleasant and enjoyable. When the soul has a female disposition, it desires a husband, someone who will protect it from harm. In other words, when the soul has a male attitude, We utilize intellect to enjoy, but when it is a female attitude, we utilize intellect to protect ourselves from flaws and mistakes. The princess Vidarbhi became attracted to a prince from Pandya. Pandya literally means wisdom. Thus, she became attracted to someone with special wisdom. So at this point, when he reincarnates as Vidarbhi, he wants somebody who isn't just clever, like the queen from his previous life. She was very intelligent. She could teach him how to enjoy life in the most productive way possible. But now that he's Vidarbhi, he wants somebody who has wisdom so that they can protect from mistakes. And Pandya, that's why we call them Pandits. It means wise. Thus she became attracted to someone with special wisdom. The power of his wisdom, quote, flawlessly conquered the princes of all other lands. This means that it produced a sense of security and confidence far superior to what any other master of any other knowledge could produce. So, Malayadvaja. Malayadvaja is the flag on the mountain, actually. That's what the meaning of his name is. So it means the highest type of wisdom. He became, after going through everything that he went through, and after following intelligence, dharmic intelligence, and trying to be moral about his pursuit of his happiness, he realized this is just not the right scheme. I'm not thinking about life in the right way. I want something quite different. I want to find something which will produce safe, sure, protected, unassailable happiness. So in the next life, that's symbolized by him becoming Vidarbhi and getting attracted to a prince who could defeat all the other princes. The prince of Pandya, the prince of wisdom, who could defeat all of the other princes. So that means the highest kind of wisdom. So she's being attracted to some kind of spiritual knowledge. This earned the prince the name Malayadvaj, which means ultimate, literally a flag atop a mountain. The upcoming statements in the story will make it clear what type of intellect and knowledge Malayadvaj represents. So that's about it for today. Any questions? Jonathan says, do you become whatever your mind holds on to when you die? Yam yam vapi smaram bhavan tajantyante kalevaram tantam eva iti konteya sadatad bhava bhavita. The basic rule is what your basic rule could be stated to be whatever your mind is held on to. Yes, basically, yes. The answer to your question is yes. And that verse ratifies it or confirms it. But don't think that if you're eating a bag of Cheetos and then suddenly have a heart attack or something, that you're going to become Cheetos in your next life. It's not fleeting thoughts in the mind. It will be the thing which persists after the experience of death has mushed everything else that is mushable. Right? The king was dragged out of the body and all these thoughts and everything followed him. But eventually they're mushed to dust, and all that remains is a vague stain, actually is the word, on his samskar, on his mind. A vague impression on the mind that he loves a woman. So it will be the essence of what we think about and want and desire throughout our life will be the thing which motivates us, the specifics of what would become in the next life. Besides the fact that you have to deal with your boundaries, besides the fact that you have to deal with the karma, so you will have to pursue the thing which is remaining in your mind within the boundaries that are available to you as a result of the propriety or impropriety of the things you've done. Does it make sense? If that's not clear, ask me what I mean, because it's really important. I don't know what you would say is the difference between spirit and soul. Angela, maybe you could clarify that. Maybe it's similar to the Vedic difference between Brahman and Atma. Will male Mercury try to manifest a male body? I don't understand the question, Bardo. Weird question, but are there only women in Vaikuntha then? Or are all the souls there female in disposition yet may take a male form there? The second thing is correct. Just ask yourself, are there only males in this world? No, there's not. There's males and females. Yet the entire disposition of this world is masculine. That's why it's very difficult for females. The entire disposition of the world is masculine. But within this masculine setting, there are some people who use female assets to pursue the masculine goals, and some people who use masculine assets to pursue the masculine goals. If that is not too hard to comprehend, then it's not too hard to comprehend that in Vaikuntha, which is the world which is not projected through ignorance, that there would also be males and females, but although the basic disposition there is female. So, for example, if you see a brother helping his brother, what the brother is doing is female. That helpfulness is feminine. It doesn't mean that they have to be women, but they can help through a male avenue. For example, if you want to help somebody learn how to throw a baseball, then maybe, or learn how to lift weights, let's say, then maybe it's better for you to manifest as a male to help them. So the female motivator, or the female disposition can manifest, and sometimes it's advantageous to manifest in male forms. For example, Krishna has a dad, Nanda. He is a father who's there because of to protect and love Krishna. So it's a female thing manifesting in a male form. If Krishna has a bunch of friends that are boys, Krishna has uncles, etc. But the main event of spiritual reality is female, is a feminine monopoly. Really, the main event, and you'll learn what the main event is if we ever get this stream to go all the way up to Canto 10. Now we're in Canto 4. Jonathan also asks, what would happen if you focused on God at death but you lived a karmically bad life? So again, I answered that question. It's not because if you think of a banana when you die that you become a banana tree in your next life. So it's not that just because if you happen to see a crucifix when you die, then you become Jesus Christ, or you become Saint John Paul the Baptist, or just because you see a picture of Gopal when you're dying, that all of a sudden you go to Vaikuntha. It's not the fleeting thought, but it's the thing which will remain in your mind after you've been pulled out of your body and gone through all of that. After everything has been put through the ringer, what's the only thing that remains? So it's fairly difficult to imagine a person who would be focused on God but doing bad things at the same time. If it's theoretically possible, perhaps then the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam has the story for you, which will cover this topic or touch on this topic. It's the story of Jamil, who kind of almost had the thinking of a Cheerio at the time of death and becoming a Cheerio, where he named his son Narayan, and as he was dying, he called for Narayan, and then Vishnu said, whoa, somebody's calling my name at the moment of death. But it didn't work out that way. He had to be revived. He was revived from death and then had to adjust his life. And also, it didn't work it's not also that it was just a chance that the guy named his son Narayan. So anyway, you wait for the 6th canto for that story. But the thing about that I hope you realize is that you have Like for example, let's say you wanted to be a basketball player. All of your life you wanted to be a basketball player. And so when you die, that's going to be the thing that remains in your mind after death, is that idea. Maybe the basketball part will get washed out even, but the idea of wanting to excel other people in a particular game kind of setting, in a non-real kind of setting, not like in war or something, but in an analog setting like in sports. So in your next life, you'll become some kind of an athlete, guaranteed. But now, what kind of an athlete? That depends upon your karma. Do you have the karma to become a successful person or not? Right? Do you have it to be strong or to fail? To be honored or dishonored? So within your motive will carry from one life to the next, but then your motive will have a chance to succeed or fail based on your karmas. Oh, hopefully that's clear. That the next life is a combination of the karmas from previous lives with the continually existing motivation. And it's continually evolving motivation. I'm not sure what your question is, Sherry. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, or no, I have any particular qualification to answer it if it is what I think it is. All right, guys. Can we say that unfulfilled desires equal vasanas for next life? Yeah, but like I'm saying, it has to be. It's not just unfulfilled desire. Like, oh, today I want to eat a pancake. That's not. You're not going to probably become a pancake chef in your next life just because you felt like today I want to eat a pancake. But it's that sense of I want it to be respected. I want it to be respected. I want it to be respected. I never got respected. And it persists with you throughout your whole life. Well, guess what? In your next life, that's what's going to be your main focus, is to be respected. And hopefully you're doing good enough deeds now that in your next life you'll be successful at it. That's what I'm trying to say. I'll leave you with that.